The city looked softer at night, the kind of softness that made even the noise sound like a lullaby. The yellow streetlights bled through the mist, and the air smelled faintly of rain and tea leaves. That's when my phone buzzed, lighting up the dark room. "Aarav, you awake?" "Me, yeah." "What?" "Aarav, come out. Let's have tea. Just us like old times." For a moment, I just stared at the message. Aarav, after 5 long years, back in the city, back in my life, as casually as if no time had passed at all. I didn't even realize I was smiling until I caught my reflection in the window. It was past 11 when I reached the small roadside dhaba where we used to sit after college. The place hadn't changed much. The same cracked tables, the same old man brewing tea that smelled like memory. Only the signboard had grown rusted, and the walls carried stories of smoke and laughter long gone. And there he was. Aarav leaned against his car, a paper cup in hand, his shirt sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, like he'd walked out of a photograph I'd kept in my head all these years. When he saw me, that same crooked smile appeared, the one that always made me forget what I wanted to say. "You took your time," he said, voice easy, teasing. "You didn't exactly give me a warning," I replied. "Where's the fun in that?" He handed me a cup. It was hot, too hot, but I didn't let go. Somehow it felt grounding. For a minute, neither of us said anything. The steam rose between us, soft and quiet, almost like it was listening too. But things had changed in ways that words couldn't describe. His eyes carried new shadows. Mine had learned to hide old ones. He looked freer, but lonelier. I felt stronger, but emptier. I wanted to ask him why he'd disappeared after graduation, why he'd never called. But the night felt too fragile to break with questions. So I sipped the tea instead, and let the silence between us fill with ghosts. Aarav spoke first. "You ever think about college?" "Every now and then," I said. "Remember that night we got locked on the rooftop after the farewell party?" I laughed. "You mean the night you tried to confess something and then said, 'Never mind'?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "You still remember that?" "Every word," I said quietly, maybe too quietly. He looked at me then, really looked. The smile faded, replaced by something heavier, searching, the kind of gaze that feels like it's asking for permission to go back in time. The old man brought us another round of tea without asking. Maybe he remembered us, the 2 boys who once sat here every night, laughing like the world belonged to them. "You ever regret leaving?" I asked finally. Aarav exhaled, eyes on the steam. "Every day for the first year. Then I learned to call it growth. Growth doesn't usually leave silence behind," I said. He smiled faintly. "You always were the poetic one." We talked about work, life, families, all the safe topics people use to avoid the real ones. But the night was too long and too honest to stay polite. When our laughter died down, he leaned forward slightly. "You look different, Rayan," he said softly. "Older. No, quieter. You make it sound tragic." "It kind of is," he whispered. Something flickered in my chest, something warm and painful at once. And just like that, the years between us felt smaller. The road behind the dhaba was empty now. The world had gone still, except for the soft clink of cups and the hum of the electric pole. The kind of stillness where even the smallest truth could echo forever. I looked at him, really looked. The way the streetlight caught the edge of his jaw. The small scar near his temple I'd forgotten about. The way he still stirred his tea even after the sugar had long dissolved. It was strange how 5 years could vanish in a breath. "So," he said suddenly, "you still believe in having tea at midnight?" "With the right person," I said before I could stop myself. He smiled, slow, knowing. "Then I guess I'm lucky tonight." I looked away, pretending to sip, but my pulse had already betrayed me. What was this? Nostalgia? Curiosity? Or something that had been waiting for its turn since the day he left? The clock struck 12. The tea was finished, but neither of us made a move to leave. "It's late," I said. "Not for us," he replied. "Come on, let's go somewhere quieter." He gestured toward his car. The same easy confidence that once led me into all sorts of trouble. For a heartbeat, I hesitated. The night around us felt alive, too alive. But his eyes held something I couldn't say no to. And maybe, deep down, I didn't want to. So I nodded. We left the empty cups on the table, still warm with what we didn't say. As we walked toward his car, the old man called out, "Same place tomorrow, boys?" Aarav smiled. "Maybe." I didn't turn back, but I could feel his gaze on me, the kind of gaze that knew what was coming even before I did. And as we drove away, the streetlights blurred into gold streaks on the windshield. Aarav turned the radio off, the silence humming louder than any song. Then he said it, casually, almost like a joke. "You know, Ryan, I always wanted to have tea alone with you at night." I laughed, but my heart didn't, because somehow I knew it was just tea, but this night wouldn't end like any other. The road wound quietly toward the lake. Trees leaned over the asphalt like eavesdroppers, their branches heavy with dew. Aarav drove with one hand on the wheel, the other tapping the rhythm of a song only he could hear. Neither of us spoke much. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It was charged, humming, alive. When we reached the lake, he parked near the old stone path where the lamps flickered weakly. The water mirrored the moonlight, smooth and cold. Somewhere far off, a train wailed like a memory that refused to die. Aarav popped open the thermos he always carried and poured 2 steaming cups. "Still the same tea addict," he said. "Still the same tempter," I replied. We sat side by side on the low wall, knees almost touching. The tea warmed my palms. The night cooled my skin. He asked about my work, my parents, the small life I'd built while he was away. I told him things that sounded like facts, but hid the feelings underneath. The emptiness of routines, the ache of quiet evenings. "You ever feel lonely, Ryan?" he asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. I could have lied, but I didn't. More often than I admit. "Me too," he said softly, "but I guess I make better excuses for it." We both laughed, but there was sadness in it, the kind that tasted familiar. The moon climbed higher. Its light drew silver lines across Aarav's face. I watched the reflection ripple on the lake, pretending not to stare. "Do you remember," I began, "our last night before graduation? When you made me walk around the whole campus because you couldn't sleep?" "Yeah, you said you had something to tell me, but then you just smiled and walked away." "I thought you'd forgotten," he murmured. He looked at me then, really looked. I didn't say it, because I was scared I'd ruin what we had. My heartbeat filled the space his words left. "And now?" I asked. He shrugged, but his voice trembled. "Now, I think I already did." A gust of wind blew through the trees, scattering leaves across our feet. The lamp beside us flickered out, leaving only the moon. I could hear his breathing, slow, uneven. Mine matched it, like 2 chords finding harmony. He turned slightly toward me. "You know what I missed most?" he asked. "What?" "This. You. The way you listen. The way you always see more than I say." My throat tightened. Words felt too small for what was happening, too fragile to hold it. "I used to wonder," he continued, voice low, "if you ever saw me that way too." I didn't answer right away. The truth was sitting heavy in my chest, pounding to be let out. "Maybe I did," I whispered. "Maybe that's why I stopped calling you after you left." He turned fully toward me then. For the first time, I didn't look away. The distance between us was measured not in inches, but in years, and in everything we'd never said. Aarav smiled faintly. The air felt different after that, softer but heavier too. Every movement, every breath seemed to echo louder. We sat like that for what felt like forever, letting the silence say everything words couldn't. When the breeze shifted again, a few drops of rain began to fall, gentle, playful. Aarav held his hand out, catching one on his palm. "Even the sky's nervous tonight," he said with a grin. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do with the storm building inside me. The rain stopped as suddenly as it started. The world smelled new, washed clean. "You know," I said quietly, "if someone saw us right now, they'd think we were just friends catching up." "We are," he replied, "unless you'd rather be something else." It was half a joke, half a dare. I looked at him. His eyes were steady, but there was a question buried deep inside them. A question he'd asked me without words since college. "I don't know what we are," I said finally, "but I know I don't want this night to end." He nodded slowly, like he'd been waiting to hear that for years. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. The lake's reflection showed 2 shadows leaning slightly toward each other. their outlines blurring into one. When the lamp flickered back on, it startled us both. The world returned, the noise, the distance, the reality we'd briefly escaped. "We should go," I said. "Yeah," he answered, but he didn't move. For a long moment, we just sat there, staring at the empty road ahead. And when we finally stood, Aarav looked up at the sky and said, almost to himself, "It's strange how quiet the world gets before something changes forever." I didn't ask what he meant, maybe because I already knew. As we walked back to the car, our shoulders brushed. A small, accidental touch, but it sent a pulse straight through me. And though neither of us said it aloud, we both felt the same truth rising in the air between us. Whatever this was, friendship, nostalgia, or something deeper, it wasn't over yet. Not tonight. The drive back was quiet, almost too quiet. The road gleamed with fresh rain, the headlights slicing through the mist like soft gold. Aarav had turned the radio off again, and the silence hummed between us like a fragile thread. He didn't take me home. Instead, he pulled up near a small clearing just off the main road, a place we used to visit after exams to talk about everything and nothing. The old banyan tree still stood there, its roots thick like veins, its leaves whispering secrets to the night. He turned off the engine, but neither of us moved. "Why here?" I asked. "I don't know," he said quietly. "Maybe I just wanted the night to have one more memory." Rainwater dripped from the branches, tapping the car roof in uneven rhythm. The smell of wet earth filled the air, that smell that always seemed to pull the truth out of people. Aarav leaned back in his seat, eyes on the ceiling. "You ever think," he said slowly, "about how close we used to be? All the time. And how we just stopped?" I didn't answer. There were too many reasons, too many fears. I told myself, he continued, that we were just young, that maybe I imagined everything. But seeing you tonight, it feels like none of it ever went away. My heart beat faster. The inside of the car felt smaller, warmer, like the night itself was holding its breath. "What are you saying, Aarav?" He turned toward me then. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "I think you know." I did, but hearing it out loud was something else entirely. "Say it," I whispered. He hesitated, just a second, then said the words that had been waiting for years. "I loved you, Rayan. Maybe I still do." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was simple, and that made it real. The world outside blurred. Rain streaks across glass. Moonlight trembling on the hood. Inside, time slowed. I felt everything. The warmth of his presence, the ache of lost years, the way my name sounded in his voice. "You shouldn't have said that," I said finally, though my voice didn't sound like mine. "Why not?" "Because I don't know what to do with it." "You don't have to do anything," he said. "Just don't pretend you didn't feel it too." I looked at him, the man I'd missed without admitting it, the friend I'd loved in ways I never learned to name. "You think I didn't?" I asked. "That night on the rooftop, when you almost said something, I knew. I knew what it was, and I was terrified." He smiled, bittersweet. "Terrified of me?" "No," I said. "Of myself." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. They hung there, raw and trembling, and something inside both of us shifted. He reached for the thermos between us and poured what was left of the tea, still lukewarm, still carrying the faint sweetness of sugar and smoke. "To fear," he said, holding up his cup. "To honesty," I replied, clinking mine against his. We drank in silence. The taste wasn't the same, maybe because nothing was anymore. When I set my cup down, his hand brushed mine. Just a fleeting touch, accidental maybe, but enough to undo every wall I'd spent years building. I didn't pull away. "Aarav, yeah. If I say I don't want to lose you again, will that be enough?" "It's a start." He smiled softly, and the tension that had filled the night seemed to melt, replaced by something quieter, deeper. Outside, the rain began again. Not harsh this time, but gentle, like a secret being whispered to the earth. "You know," he said, "I used to imagine this moment, what it would be like if we ever said it out loud." "And how did you imagine it?" "Different," he said with a laugh. "Less rain, more courage." I laughed too. A real laugh, the kind that comes only when you've stopped pretending. The windows fogged up. Our reflections blurred into one another, indistinguishable in the dim light. Aarav looked at me again, and for a heartbeat, everything else fell away. The years, the fear, the world outside. "Ryan," he said softly. "Yeah. Thank you for not walking away tonight." I wanted to say something, anything, but my voice caught in my throat. So I did the only thing I could. I reached over and took his hand. It wasn't planned. It wasn't bold. It was just real, warm, trembling, full of everything we hadn't said for years. We sat like that for a long time, watching the rain trace lines down the glass, the night closing around us like a secret. And in that small, quiet car, I realized something simple, something terrifying and beautiful at once. This wasn't the end of something old. It was the beginning of something neither of us had the words for. The rain didn't stop. It softened into a steady rhythm, like the world was breathing slowly again. The windshield shimmered with silver lines, and the car felt like its own small universe, sealed away from everything outside. Aarav's hand was still in mine. Neither of us had spoken for minutes, but the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt complete. He leaned back slightly, eyes half on me, half on the window. The faint reflection of streetlights moved across his face like passing thoughts. "You ever think," he murmured, "how strange it is that some people spend their whole lives pretending not to care?" "Every day," I said. "Sometimes I think I became one of them." He turned his hand in mine, slow, deliberate, our fingers aligning like they had always known where to fit. "You don't have to pretend right now," he said quietly. The words were soft, but they landed heavy. They broke something loose inside me. I took a slow breath. "Aarav, if I tell you what I feel, you can't unhear it. Then let me hear it anyway." He said it with that calm confidence I'd always envied, but his eyes betrayed him. There was hope there, and fear. "I'll let the truth come, the way rain spills when clouds can't hold it anymore. I try not to miss you," I said. "I try to make you just a memory, a voice, a face. But every time I drank tea alone, it felt like I was cheating on something that never even happened." He didn't answer. He just watched me, still, focused, like he was afraid the moment would disappear if he blinked. The air inside the car thickened. The world outside was nothing but silver and silence. Aarav reached out and brushed a drop of rain off my cheek. Or maybe it wasn't rain at all. The touch was feather light, uncertain, but it sent a tremor through me. For a second, we both froze. "Ryan," he said softly, "we don't have to run anymore." It wasn't an invitation. It was permission. I looked at him. Really looked. The curve of his jaw, the quiet tremor in his lips, the warmth in his eyes that had never left. My chest ached with something that felt like relief and longing mixed together. Without thinking, I moved closer. The space between us disappeared, replaced by the kind of silence that holds every word you never said. Our foreheads touched first, a small, trembling connection that said everything words couldn't. It wasn't about passion. It was about surrender, about finally letting go of the fear that had been shaping us for years. Neither of us spoke. The car was filled with the quiet sound of breathing, his mind both uneven and honest. Aarav closed his eyes. "I've waited so long for this," he whispered. And yet, even then, we both hesitated. Because love, real love, isn't just about wanting. It's about choosing whether you're ready for what comes after. I could feel his heartbeat under my hand. It matched mine, fast, uncertain, alive. We sat like that, skin against skin, thought against thought, on the edge of something huge and irreversible. But then Aarav pulled back just slightly. His gaze was soft, almost protective. "Not tonight," he said. It surprised me. I blinked. "What?" "If this is real," he said, voice trembling, "I want to remember it without rushing, without regret." The rain outside grew heavier again, as if to seal the moment in time. He smiled, a small, tired, beautiful smile. "You're not a secret anymore, Ryan. Not to me." I wanted to say something back, something perfect, something worthy of what he just said, but all I could do was nod. He leaned over and rested his head against my shoulder. The weight of it was familiar, grounding, right? For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. The world outside blurred into sound. Rain, wind, a distant thunder. Inside the car, there was only warmth. His breath against my neck. My hand still holding his. No words. No fear. No pretense. Just the quiet realization that love doesn't always arrive like lightning. Sometimes it comes like rain, slow and patient, washing away everything you thought you knew. Minutes passed, or maybe hours. Time didn't matter anymore. When the rain finally began to fade, Aarav lifted his head, eyes glassy but peaceful. "Promise me one thing," he said. "Anything. Don't disappear again." I smiled. "Only if you don't either." He nodded, then looked out at the sky, where the clouds were finally breaking apart. "The night's almost over," he said. "Yeah," I whispered, "but maybe the best part isn't yet." He turned back to me, and for a moment, there was only light, soft, silver, and new. We didn't need more. The moment itself was enough. Dawn arrived slowly, smearing pale color across the horizon. The world outside Aarav's car looked different, softer, almost shy, like even the city didn't want to intrude on what the night had left behind. We hadn't slept. We just stayed, talking in half whispers, sometimes saying nothing at all. Every word carried the weight of 5 years. Every silence carried the warmth of what we'd finally said. The rain had stopped, but the smell of wet earth still hung in the air. Mist floated over the lake, and the first light brushed against Aarav's face, tracing the curve of a new beginning, or maybe an ending. He opened the door, stepped out, and stretched, his breath turning to fog in the cold air. I followed, wrapping my jacket tighter around me. The ground was damp, the sky painted with the pale blush of morning. For a while, we just stood there, watching the sunrise. "Strange," Aarav said softly. "Everything feels lighter now." "Yeah," I replied, like we finally exhaled. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. There was a shadow there, something unsaid. "You're leaving today, aren't you?" I asked. "Yeah, I wasn't supposed to stay this long anyway." "Where to?" "Mumbai, maybe. Work. Life. Noise." The words stung, even though I already knew them. "So that's it? After all this?" "It's not nothing," he said quickly, "but it's not something we can name yet." He looked down at his hands, as if trying to hold on to the night that had already slipped away. "Last night," he said, "felt like finding a part of myself I thought I'd lost." "Then don't lose it again," I said. "You either," he whispered. We walked along the edge of the lake, our shoes sinking into the soft mud. The world was quiet. No traffic yet. No voices, just the sound of rippling water and the distant call of a bird welcoming the morning. "You think we'll see each other again?" I asked. "Maybe not soon," he said honestly, "but I think we'll find each other when we need to." That was such an Aarav thing to say, half dream, half truth. He stopped walking and turned to me. "Rayan, can I ask you something?" "Of course." If last night was the only night we ever had, would it still be enough? I wanted to say no. I wanted to tell him that one night couldn't possibly hold everything I'd waited for. But when I opened my mouth, the only word that came out was, yes, because somehow it was. He smiled, that quiet, crooked smile that had started everything. We went back to the car. He picked up the empty paper cups, the thermos, the tiny things that made the night feel real. He placed one cup in my hand. "Keep it," he said, "so you don't forget." As if I could, I murmured. We both laughed, the kind of laugh that breaks and heals at the same time. He drove me home. The city had started waking up. People on bicycles, shopkeepers opening shutters, a boy chasing a stray dog. Life moving forward, as if the world hadn't paused for us. When we reached my street, the sun was already bright. I didn't want to open the door. I didn't want the night to become a story too soon. "Thanks for the tea," I said finally. "Any time," he said, "though next time, I'm making it stronger." I smiled, pretending not to hear the word next. It sounded too hopeful. He waited until I reached my gate. The engine purred softly behind me. I turned around one last time. He was still watching. "Aarav," I called. "Yeah." "Don't forget the night you wanted to have tea alone with your friend." I couldn't if I tried. Then he drove off, slow, steady, disappearing around the bend where morning swallowed the last of the mist. I stood there until the sound of his car faded. clutching that empty cup like it still held warmth. When I finally went inside, the house was quiet. I placed the cup on my windowsill, right beside the little cactus I'd somehow kept alive all these years. And as sunlight filled the room, I realized something simple and sharp. Sometimes, the people who leave don't really go anywhere. They stay in the smallest things: a voice on the wind, a cup of tea gone cold, the echo of laughter that never really ends. That morning, I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just sat there, listening to the city wake, feeling the weight of a love that had finally been spoken, and the silence that followed it. A month passed. Then, too, life, as it always does, blurred into its ordinary rhythm. Work, traffic, dinner alone, unread messages, and too many nights replaying what-ifs in my head. The paper cup still sat by the window, a faint stain at its bottom, collecting sunlight and dust. Every morning, when I made my tea, I looked at it, like it was waiting for something, or someone. Then one day, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Aarav. Can we meet?" For a moment, everything in me froze: breath, thought, heartbeat. We met that evening at the same old tea stall near the park, the one where we'd first learned how to laugh without caring who stared. He looked different, thinner, quieter, the kind of tired you can't fix with sleep. "You cut your hair," I said. "Yeah," he smiled, trying to start over. We talked like nothing had changed, but everything had. There was a hesitation behind his words, a silence between his smiles. "You okay?" I asked finally. "Not really," he said, his voice almost breaking. "I came to tell you something." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small envelope. My name was written on it, in his handwriting. "What is this?" "Read it when I leave," he said softly. "Aarav, please," he interrupted. "Just let me go this time without stopping me." He stood up, eyes glistening under the streetlight. "You know what the hardest part is?" he said. "It's realizing that some people come into your life just to teach you what love really feels like before they have to leave." And then he walked away. No goodbye, no backward glance. I wanted to follow him. I didn't. Instead, I opened the envelope right there. Inside was a letter, written in that messy handwriting I'd memorized years ago. "Ryan, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to say it out loud. I'm leaving for treatment, something I should have done months ago. The doctors say it's late, but not too late. I didn't tell you before because I didn't want our night, that night, to be remembered as pity or pain. I wanted it to stay pure. Just two friends being honest for once. If things go well, maybe I'll call again. If not, then at least I gotta have tea with you alone under that stupid streetlight that flickers every 5 seconds. You once said you wanted that night to mean something. It did. For me, it was everything. Don't wait for me. Live the life we used to talk about. The one with no fear, no hiding. Love the way you wanted to love. And whenever you drink tea at night, think of me. Not with sadness, but with warmth. Always, Aarav." The paper trembled in my hands. The tea stall around me blurred into color and sound. The whistle of a kettle, the rustle of evening wind, someone laughing far away. I folded the letter carefully, like it might shatter if I breathed too hard. That night, I went back to the lake. It looked the same: still water, soft moonlight, and the same silence that had once held our secrets. I sat by the edge and took out the old paper cup from my bag. I poured tea into it. One for me, one for the memory of him. "You always said I make tea too sweet," I whispered. "Guess you complain even now." I smiled, a real one this time, and let the cup float away on the surface of the water. It drifted slowly, spinning gently, carrying with it everything we never said. As it disappeared into the dark, I realized something I hadn't before. Love doesn't always end when people do. Sometimes it stays, in tea stains, in letters, in a moment under the rain that never stops echoing. The wind picked up, cool and gentle, brushing against my face like a familiar hand. And then I heard it, faint but real. A whisper. "Ryan, maybe it was just the wind. Maybe not." Either way, I whispered back. "I remember." Final hook/closing line. He wanted to have tea alone with his friend that night. But what he didn't know was that the tea would be the last thing they'd ever share, and the first thing he'd remember forever.